throughout the day. Let's get back to the conversation we were having about the media coverage of President-elect Donald Trump, who I just brought up before we went to the news conference, that he had accepted this congratulatory call from the president of Taiwan. This sparked sharp objections from China. Going back to our panel here, Sarah Flores, Trump, as I noted, took to Twitter, his favorite way of communicating with the American public, I think, and said, interesting that Taiwan sells billions of dollars, or the U.S., excuse me, sells billions in military equipment to Taiwan, but I should not accept a congratulatory call. So does the press get too upset here over breaches of protocol?
Well, I think perhaps all of D.C., but in particular the press likes a certain thing to happen next to another certain thing. They're a little OCD, perhaps, in their coverage. And President-elect Trump has thrown that playbook out the window in the last 6 months. And so the press needs to start catching up to the idea that he's going to be far less meticulous in his wording, because that's not how real people talk to each other in protocol and those type of things. And so the press needs to take a larger, a 30,000-foot stance and stop chasing these rabbits down the holes in the meantime.
I think on foreign policy in particular, this is going to be true. I mean, foreign policy is built around this elaborate, very embroidered language of diplomacy that everyone uses and that Trump obviously is not going to use.
Right.
And it's going to shock people, and it's going to get, it's going to be really easy for reporters to call people in this town and elsewhere who are shocked and who are appalled. So it's going to make for big stories.
One of the tweets, Aaron, that got so much media attention, and rightly so, I think, was when, in the face of this recount, which is now fizzling, Trump tweeted that millions of people voted illegally in this election, and if it had not been for that, he would have won the popular vote. And media organizations pointed out, rightly, that there was no evidence to back that up. It wasn't based on any facts. And the Trump people have been pushing back, but they haven't really been able to defend it or provide any evidence.
That's right. And some of these tweets have unsubstantiated claims, or he is raising an opinion, as he did with the flag-burning tweet that he issued on Tuesday morning. I don't think all Trump tweets should be covered equally. The tweet with respect to the Taiwan phone call, when he put out when he said, as you just mentioned, the U.S. sells billions of dollars in military equipment to Taiwan, that kind of tweet, analysts said, oh, well, he may have a point with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. Everything is not...
That kind of tweet made the kind of impact that no damage control spin could make.
Sure.
So that's an important tweet to cover.
Okay. And look, he's entitled to talk about flag burning, and a lot of people probably agree with him. But
every time the media overreacts to one of these things, frankly, his favorables keep going up.
Okay, so you're saying it's working. On the other hand, after voted illegally, correspondent Jeff did a report in which he suggested that Trump was being a sore winner. So the president-elect retweeted a guy named @filibuster, who turns out to be a 16-year-old kid. Felony, pathetic. You have no sufficient evidence that Donald Trump did not suffer from voter fraud. Shame, bad reporter. The kid says he didn't say bad reporter, but that was added. So what do we do when Donald Trump chooses to go after journalists and news organizations by name for reporting on something he said earlier for which there may not be much substantiation?
Well, for all of the hand-wringing and whatnot by reporters, frankly, it's helped all of their ratings. They massively benefited from this entire cycle. So this idea that they're going to cry foul on the one hand, but keep reporting it and keep getting excited about it on the other hand is silly.
I think that one way we could do it is when he has opinions or unsubstantiated claims. It could be a tweet of the week or a tweet of the day with a branded segment on television or a sidebar story in a newspaper. But not every tweet should be covered in the same way.
But, Michael, even if we were to agree that perhaps there's a bit of media overreaction here and that every single presidential thought doesn't deserve, a full day of cable news coverage, there is also the question of holding Donald Trump accountable. And how do you do that if not by focusing on his own words and what are the implications for policy and are there facts to back it up and so forth? It seems like it's kind of a dilemma for our business.
It is a dilemma. It is a dilemma. There's a school of thought now that says, well, let's not give all this attention to all these tweets, because when he does these tweets, he's doing it to distract from something else that's going on that's more substantive and more important.
Well, that's a supposition on your part. Maybe true, maybe partially true.
I'm describing something. I'm not supposing it. Maybe it is that thought out on his part. Maybe it's not. But it highlights that this is a really new situation for the media. We've never had a president in my adult life lifetime who just says what's on his mind.
Yeah, well, okay, we got to get a break. Sorry, our time was truncated. I think we can fill up that phrase. We've never had President Who. We'll hear that a lot more, Michael. How does the Trump team view the coverage of this transition? Joining us now from Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, is Mike Huckabee, the former Arkansas governor and presidential candidate who is a vocal supporter of Trump. Governor, here, let's go to the drama about the cabinet. You've said, still a candidate for state, at his dinner the other night with Donald Trump, had a slice of humble pie. Why are you and many others in the media mocking him so much when lots of former GOP rivals are kind of mending fences with or saying nice things about the president-elect?
You know, I don't think it's about a personal thing, but it's about the fact that Mitt Romney didn't just disagree with Donald Trump. He went after him in a way that was unprecedented for somebody who had previously been the nominee. All the followers. I mean, that's pretty contempt. I think the obvious question is, there's so many good people that he could select for that role. Don't put somebody in there that is not only going to be maybe not compatible with your views, but really that will create a firestorm among the people who elected you.
I totally
if
understand
he picks Romney,
that.
so what?
But the president-elect obviously has a different view, or might. We'll see whether he or one of the other contenders gets picked for that job. The New York Times, I'm sure you saw, had about a zillion-word piece a few days ago about Donald Trump's real estate holdings around the world and all the conflicts he could face in making decisions as president. Aren't those fair questions, given that foreign leaders around the world may try to curry favor with the new White House?
Well, I think they're fair questions in the great universal sense, but look, let's be realistic. Donald Trump has a lot more on his mind than some business deal that he has going anywhere in the world. The fact that he's donating his salary to charity indicates that he's not doing this for the money. I mean, nobody in their right mind. In fact, a survey came out today that showed that Donald Trump, even under the most conservative estimates of his wealth, is actually more wealthy than the first 44 presidents combined. Donald Trump doesn't need the money. So, you know, I think it's a little bit ludicrous for somebody to say, oh, Trump is really going to be working to try to maintain his fortune. He doesn't have to work to maintain his fortune, and it's one of the refreshing things about his presidency.
You've said the New York Times has no credibility, but Donald Trump went to the newspaper and had an hour-long conversation there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he spent that time. I think that was an hour that he could have spent napping and probably had more of an effect on his future.
Or tweeting.
Look, I have a real disdain. No, I do, Howard. I have a real disdain for some of the gasbags in the media who have done nothing but nitpick everything Donald Trump has said and done. Most importantly, they've nitpicked the manner in which he has said it. They need to understand, whether they get it or not, we're in a world of new media. This is not the days when people sat down and leisurely read newspapers and got ink on their hand. Medium news from short bursts of tweets and Facebook posts. Donald Trump has capitalized on that, and I think a lot of the traditional media are gasping for breath because they don't know how to handle a guy who understands people's ways of getting news better than they do.
For me, the question is whether nitpicking is driven by a continuing hostility to Donald Trump. I've got about half a minute, Governor. You had a meeting with the president-elect. You say you turned down the offer to run a department. Why not join the administration? Are you still considering it, or are you still being considered?
You know, again, that's a conversation that I only want to have with Donald Trump. I want to be able to be helpful to Donald Trump in whatever way I can. I'm not sure that being a federal employee is the best way I can do it.
Keeping the government payrolls
down.
doing
Right now.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoy, you know, sparring with guys like you. It's
all
a
right,
little more
let's
fun
do
sometimes.
it again, Governor. Good to see you. Thanks very much. And we'll be back with more on Trump and Twitter and other subjects. Stay with us. Donald Trump is still using Twitter, as we noted, to make news, huge news, just as he did during the campaign. That prompted the New York Times to ask this question. If Trump tweets it, is it news? A quandary for the news media. Really? Joining us now, Mark Feldstein, former correspondent for ABC and CNN, who's now a professor of journalism at the University of Maryland, and Susan Frischio, chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Susan, the New York Times is asking the question whether it's news when the president-elect says anything.
I know. And what's interesting about Trump is he's not the pioneer of Twitter from the White House. That, of course, was Obama. He's got 16 million Twitter followers. The top-rated network newscast has 9 million viewers. So think about that. He tweets something and he gets more of an audience than the top-rated evening. Of course what he says is news. Just this morning on social media, he put out a message that he was going to, he re-upped his tariff threat of companies that leave the country could be threatened with a 35% increase on the products they try to import to the U.S. Of course it's news, no question.
He also went after SNL for the third time as unfunny, and Alec Baldwin's impersonation is bad. But the argument seems to be, and I've heard some pundits make this, that if Trump tweets something that doesn't have a factual basis, like millions of people voted illegally, the media shouldn't amplify it. Then we're acting as his megaphone. But if he says something like that, isn't that news as well that we should all scrutinize and debate?
Yeah, a lie is perhaps more newsworthy than the truth. I mean, I don't think everything he says is newsworthy. What he ate for breakfast isn't newsworthy. And Saturday Night Live, is newsworthy, but not big newsworthy. It says something more about his thin skin than it does perhaps about anything else. But yeah, presidents make news by both what they do and what they say.
So if instead of being Twitter, which a lot of people may find sort of weird because they're not on it, but it was a 30-second video on YouTube, if it was a short press release sent by fax as they used to do, would anyone question it?
Well, I suppose anyone, his opponents would. But look, Teddy Roosevelt used to gather the reporters around when he was getting his morning shave at the White House. Presidents use the tools they have.
But at least in that instance, reporters could ask questions. So a lot of this is going around the media, which other presidents have tried to do. Ronald Reagan started a weekly radio address that made news. And as Chris Wallace pointed out in the New York Times piece, Susan, it was news when Reagan would shout a few words over the helicopter blades. So I'm having a hard time understanding. I understand like everything shouldn't be pumped up to 11, but I'm having a hard time understanding this, he's tweeting again and we're falling for it.
Falling for it. It's like a way of delegitimizing Trump, which I think the media, unfortunately, has fallen into a habit of doing. I think the real question going forward for Trump on Twitter is, this is a very practical one, is he going to have 2 Twitter accounts? So the POTUS heard that from the press, suspect that will be regulated and handled his current Twitter, which has same followers, have that on the side. So, daytime POTUS tweets may look more traditional like we've seen from President Obama. Then maybe we'll get these 3 a.m. tweets from the real Donald Trump saying things about tariffs and Saturday Night Live.
And I just wonder which would be considered more newsworthy. But to me, this is another manifestation of the journalistic idea that Donald Trump must be covered differently than other presidents. Because, look, he does things in a different way, but just because he's using Twitter, just because there are 140 characters, although sometimes he does multiple tweets, there's a media debate about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think some of it is what Susan said. There's some denial. But I also think the media feels like it got played by Trump, that it got manipulated. And there's a lot of soul-searching being done now by the mainstream media about how to deal with that. I'm not defending that. I'm trying to explain it. And there's a sense that, yes, we don't want to be just stenographers for power, particularly, deceitful statements. But to go to the other extreme and say we're not going to cover it at all, I mean, that's obviously ludicrous.
Maybe there should be some journalistic soul-searching about the shortcomings that we all had during this campaign, saying Trump had no chance, even on the morning of the election. And some, I think, still haven't accepted him. But look, clearly, he's breaking all the rules here, and that makes it interesting and newsworthy. Susan Frischio, Mark Feldstein, thanks very much for joining us. Up next, we'll talk a bit about Kellyanne Conway, who seems to be making lots of news, and Morning Joe. They got into a little spat. Kellyanne Conway is known for speaking her mind, and that has prompted some pushback from the media. While Donald Trump has been seriously considering Mitt Romney one of his harshest critics for Secretary of State, his former campaign manager seemed to be leading the opposition.
Why are you campaigning against Mitt Romney as Secretary of State? I'm not campaigning against anyone. People feel betrayed to think that Governor Romney, who went out of his way to question the character and the intellect and the integrity of Donald Trump, now our president-elect, would be given the most significant cabinet post of all, Secretary of State.
Then things got even weirder. Joe Scarborough reported on his MSNBC show that the president-elect was mad at the woman helping to lead his transition, and Kellyanne texted him during the show.
This was somebody going rogue, according to the top 3 people in the Trump organization. Trump furious. We have a response from Kellyanne Conway, who says about our reporting this morning, it is sexist. She says she can have any job she wants. And is thinking about taking a role inside and outside of the campaign. I'm not sure how that reporting is sexist, because those were sources at the top of the campaign.
Well, I'm not sure if it was sexist, but it seems to have been wrong. Trump quickly put out a statement saying he encouraged Conway and approved her going public with her concerns about Mitt and considers her a tremendous asset. Her rough week continued at a Harvard forum moderated by journalists from NBC, The Washington Post, and BuzzFeed, where Jennifer Palmieri, Hillary Clinton's communications director, let her have it.
If providing a platform for white supremacists makes me a brilliant tactician, I am glad to have lost. I would rather lose than win the way you guys did.
Do you think I ran a campaign where white supremacists had a platform? You going to look me in the face and tell me that?
I did. Kellyanne
really?
did.
Guys, I can tell you're angry, but wow. I mean, hashtag he's your president. How's that? I understand that they're angry. I understand some of them are bitter, but they made it very personal last night.
We heard that you were accused last night of giving a platform to white supremacists. Do you think that perception still exists? And is a campaign concerned about that?
Well, it's not a fact. It's just completely false. And that's why I asked Jen Palmieri, communications director for Hillary Clinton, if she would look me in the eye and tell me that I ran a campaign that would allow that.
I get there are very raw feelings here, but the Clinton folks and the media need to come to terms with Trump's victory and stop saying he won 306 electoral votes because of white supremacists. Why is Donald Trump going after a major network anchor? That and more when Media Buzz returns in a moment. So why was the newly elected president of the United States going after ABC's Martha Raddatz? We talked about the Cincinnati rally earlier in the show. Here's Donald Trump.
How about when a major anchor who hosted a debate started crying when she realized that we won? How about that? Tears. No, tell me this isn't true.
Well, here's the context, and we'll show it to you. It was late on election night, and Martha Raddatz, ABC correspondent and anchor, who spent a lot of time in war zones with the military, was quoting Tim Kaine as saying that his own son was serving in the military, and he, Kaine, wouldn't trust Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. And then she added this, so let's play it for the viewers.
That's a pretty extraordinary thing to say if you have a son in the Marine Corps and that you don't trust the commander-in-chief. The people in the military defend the Constitution.
We're back with the panel. Erin McPike, what do you make of Donald Trump seizing on that moment and making it that, that Martha Raddatz was crying about his election?
First of all, she wasn't crying, and there were no tears, as he said. And Matthew Dowd, who was on set right next to her, went to Twitter and said, I was sitting right next to her, and she did not cry.
Yeah.
ABC came back and said she had been on air for 7 hours, and so her voice may have cracked. And I think that's as far as you can go with that one.
Well, Raddatz herself says it's fiction, and she didn't even choke up. She kind of looked choked up to me, but everyone can make their own choice. Your thoughts, Sarah?
Well, I think the real problem is you pair that with the debate performance where she decided to debate Donald Trump herself instead of letting Hillary Clinton debate her. That's what created the foundation for this argument that she cried. I think she sounded like she was choked up. I think
that's a little bit of an overstatement, but you're saying
fair,
she was. You think, in your opinion, she was tougher on Clinton than on Trump?
Oh, well, and she debated Trump, but more to that, I don't know of a single reporter who was rooting for Donald Trump in this, and there were several who were rooting for Hillary Clinton. That's the problem that this gets to, a larger narrative.
I can move on right now. And, you know, one of the things that I've really been struck by in the news conference of all the appointees this week is that Many of them are, well, the political headline was Team of Gazillionaires. And it is true that many of the people that Donald Trump has tapped are either billionaires or multimillionaires. In other words, they're pretty rich. Let's look at a little bit of the media chatter on this subject.
Billionaire investor Wilbur Ross tapped for Commerce Secretary. Todd Ricketts, whose billionaire family owns the Chicago Cubs, Deputy Commerce Secretary. Sensing a pattern here?
The administration is starting to staff up with its top names. It's turning into quite a full employment program for the nation's billionaires.
So the Washington Post has a whole piece on this on the front page. Their collective wealth in many ways defies Trump's populist campaign promises. So because they're successful businessmen and have made a lot of money, they're going to be anti-populist? Is that a fair assumption?
It may prove not to be a fair assumption, but it's not a totally unreasonable assumption on which to base a news story right now at this point in time, I don't think. I mean,
JFK, FDR were pretty rich guys who certainly did a lot for the American middle class.
Yeah, they were, but you know, I mean, JFK's or FDR's labor secretary was Frances Perkins. She wasn't a rich person. I mean, you know, all these cabinet people are rich in both administrations, both parties. That's certainly true. Trump talked a very, very different game. That's fair.
Obama's ambassador appointments were mostly donors. I didn't see the collective media. Obama had more than any past president.
And President Obama's Commerce Secretary, Penny Pritzker, comes from the Hyatt family, worth about $2.5 billion or something like that. So is there an assumption? And by the way, if these people carry out policies that do favor their wealthy friends and try to stick it to the middle class, then I think the press should hold them accountable. But they haven't taken office yet. So is there an assumption when it's Republicans, rich Republicans, that it's a little different?
Of course, there always is a different presumption of incompetence given to Republicans. But I think also the American people elected a billionaire president. They elected someone who was a current business person. This idea that he was suddenly supposed to, you know, shake off all business ties to his own business, that he was never going to appoint someone who he knew through his business ties. That's not what the American people said on Election Day. I think until he starts, as you said, actually taking actions in one direction or another, the media needs to take a deep breath and find a new way to cover him.
You know, the president-elect talked about seeing a report, it was actually on NBC Nightly News, about people at the Carrier air conditioning plant saying they thought he had promised to save their jobs. But the great symbolism of what he did there, whether you think it was a good deal or not, the 1,000 jobs. Just to come back to that flag-burning tweet, it actually happened after Trump saw a Fox News report about a college in Massachusetts where some students who were opposed to Trump's election had burned the flag. So it wasn't completely out of the blue. So just to wrap up here on his use of Twitter, I mean, sometimes he gets to set the agenda. Presidents tend to have a pretty good megaphone.
That's right. Again, though, with that particular tweet, the precedent has been set by the courts on flag burning. And
so he's being provocative. Maybe he didn't say, I will propose on my first day in office. He said, I think they should go to jail if they burn the flag. A lot of people would agree.
It could be that some of these tweets stop once he is the president. Kellyanne Conway was asked this morning if these tweets would continue once he's in office, and she said that's up to him and the Secret Service.
Well, he can appoint the Secret Service head he wants. Aaron McPike again, Michael Tomasky and Sarah Flores, thanks. Still to come, my take on President Obama blaming the Trump victory in part on Fox News and too many bars. Sometimes off-camera jokes are just not funny. Go ahead and listen to this video of CNN correspondent Suzanne Malveaux waiting for Donald Trump's plane to arrive in Indianapolis.
If I did this, it means he's landed. Okay. That means his plane's crashed. No.
I like that. Nobody's killed, just injured.
That means the plane has crashed. Now, CNN says in a statement, an unfortunate and inappropriate remark was made by one of our producers off camera yesterday. We have apologized to the Trump transition team, and the producer has been disciplined. Good response from CNN. But can you imagine that morbid joke being made about President Obama's plane? Barack Obama couldn't resist, just couldn't resist. After 8 years in which he often seemed to have one network on his mind.
Look, if I watched Fox News, I wouldn't vote for me either.
While good, affordable health care might seem like a fanged threat to the freedom of the American people on Fox News, it turns out it's working pretty well in the real world.
Now he's taking one parting swipe. Obama explained Donald Trump's success among white working-class voters this way to Rolling Stone publisher Jan Wenner, who enthusiastically supports him. Part of it is Fox News in every bar and restaurant in big chunks of the country, but part of it is also Democrats not working at a grassroots level. Obama did partially blame his own party, but here's what's striking. The president has the world's biggest bully pulpit, but he often portrays Fox as all but drowning him out. Some folks at this network now pushing back.
This president, for all of his kind of, no drama Obama, comes out and in a very infantile manner blames cable news.
I mean, we are number one, Jonah, but he thinks we control the universe.
The great irony of this is that he complained about Fox News to Rolling Stone magazine, the people behind the fake UVA rape scandal, which was they were just found guilty of defamation in a federal court.
That's true. Rolling Stone suffered a huge black eye for that bogus story. Now, President Obama is entitled to challenge whatever he views as unfair criticism, but at times he has used Fox as a scapegoat. What would have been better is if the president, not to mention Hillary Clinton, had done more than a precious few interviews with Fox as a way of reaching the very voters he says the Democrats have lost touch with. That's it for this edition of Media Buzz. I'm Howard Kurtz. Thanks for watching. We hope you'll check out our Facebook page. Give us a like. We post a lot of original content there. Media Buzz at foxnews.com. Media Buzz at foxnews.com. Ask a question, make a comment about the media. No political rants. And continue the conversation on Twitter at Howard Kurtz, or check out our Twitter page, Media Buzz FNC on Twitter. We're back here next Sunday. See you then with the latest buzz.
Heartbreaking developments from Oakland, California at this hour. We have just learned the death toll from the warehouse fire now stands at 24, and officials there fear that number could rise. Welcome to a brand new hour inside America's News headquarters. I'm Arthel Neville.
Hello, Arthel.
Hi, Eric.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. Right now, firefighters remain on that scene trying to secure parts of that devastated building. Only 20% of the charred remains of that structure have so far been searched. And the tragic search for more bodies is expected to continue for at least another 48 hours. In the meantime, friends and family are grieving and remembering their loved ones. As this devastating tragedy unfolds, there are now new questions emerging about the reported building code violations with no sprinklers, no smoke detectors. Why did the government of Oakland allow this building to remain open in the first place? Senior correspondent Adam Housley live at the scene in Oakland, where we just received an update in the last hour from officials. And Adam will now bring us up to date. Hello, Adam.
Yeah, Eric, you mentioned in that intro, 24 people are now confirmed dead inside the building here. We were worried that that number would go up before that press conference. We talked to a couple of firefighters as they came out of the building here to my right. We'll go give you a look from this angle right now. The two-story building is where the fire broke out, and that is where the people died inside that building. But as firefighters came out after being in there for about a 4-hour shift, they said a number of bodies had been found together, basically piled on top of each other, as if they had found each other during that inferno and could not find a way out. Really a heartbreaking situation for the firefighters. You can see it on their faces. You can hear it in their voices as they come out. Now, from the air, you can see the tedious task that faces them. Basically, the building is just a shell now. The floors collapsed on top of each other. I was told there's a ton of flammable material inside. We've seen the photos. We'll show those to you in a minute. But in the meantime, from the air, you can see the devastation. And you could also hear the hurt on so many of the firefighters, especially Battalion Chief Melinda Drayton from the Oakland Fire Department, as she talked about what they're finding.
It was quiet. It was heartbreaking. To get through